Welcome to Morning Message for January the 12th. On Saturday morning, I was pushing some snow around in our driveway, mainly because we had had a light snowfall the night before, and I am always trying to remove as much snow as I can because I don't want it to get icy. I don't want it to freeze for a couple of reasons, partly because it's really hard to shovel snow when it's ice, and of course for safety reasons as well. So as I was pushing that snow around on Saturday morning, a memory came back to me, and probably not a terribly pleasant memory. I had a friend in junior high school who was somehow related to one of the teachers. I'm not going to name the teacher, but this friend of mine was somehow related. I don't know if it was a direct relationship or whatever, but they had some sort of connection. And sometime in January, my friend got a phone call from this teacher asking him to come over and shovel her driveway. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and this friend of mine called me and asked me if I'd like to help. It was a sort of a Tom Sawyer situation, if I have the right reference. It'll be fun, John. And the teacher didn't even live in the neighborhood, so we had a good walk to get there in order to shovel this driveway. Well, when we got there, we were really disappointed because clearly she hadn't had her driveway shoveled all winter. All that we could see really was the tracks where the tires normally were, or where the tires would go. And otherwise it was solid ice. She hadn't salted it, she hadn't shoveled it, and because we had had a little bit of a rain earlier in the week, it was particularly hard, and this was the driveway we had to shovel. And it took us hours, the two of us shoveling away and chipping away at the ice as best we could to try to clear her driveway, and eventually we did. And so my friend went into the house to tell her we were done, and of course to receive payment, and he received 20 dimes. I have to say that he was reluctant to share any of that with me, but on the way home we negotiated that we had done an equal amount of work, and we both deserved half of what we had received. I mean, even back then, back when I was in junior high school, that was really, really cheap. Probably $5 to $10 might have been a good payment for shoveling a driveway. But a driveway that had been frozen solid and we had managed to get down to pavement should have been 3 or 4 times that with the amount of work we were doing. But all we got were these 20 dimes. Obviously, we didn't feel as though our reward was worth the tremendous effort that we had put in. And thinking about that, of course, I can't help but I think it's at the very end of the Beatitudes in Matthew's Gospel, the final one ending with, "For your reward will be great in heaven." I didn't feel like waiting that long for a reward for shoveling that particular driveway. But of course, I don't really think that that's what Jesus is talking about. When Jesus talks about heaven, in most situations in the gospel, it doesn't seem as though he's talking about the hereafter. He's not asking us to, wait and be patient and to put up with life until such time that we receive that great reward. I think what Jesus is talking about is something a little bit more immediate, something that's possible for us now, possible for us in this lifetime. Even though we face struggles and hardship in our own life, that even in the midst of that, there's the possibility of joys and rewards in terms of our relationship with God. And I think that's the crux of the matter. It's being aware of God's presence in our lives. So for me, the difference between heaven and not heaven is God's presence versus God's absence. God is always present with us, and that heavenly joy that Jesus promises at the end of the Beatitudes, that heaven that he refers to every time he's asked about it, is something that is possible for us now when we become aware of God's presence in our lives. Now, I don't want to put undue pressure on myself or on anybody else to be constantly aware of that presence. That's a really difficult thing to do. But in a sense, that's really the goal of our prayer life. That's the goal of our spiritual journey. That's the goal of being a part of a religious community, is to encourage one another to find ways in which we can let God's light, God's presence break through into our lives. And regardless of what we're doing, if we're shoveling an icy driveway for 20 dimes, in the midst of that, there's an opportunity for joy, for God's presence to be in the midst of all of that pain and suffering that we endure in our lifetime. Even in the midst of pain and suffering, there is the possibility of that heavenly joy, that heavenly reward, that sense of God's presence with us as we walk this journey. So my hope and prayer for all of you today is, and for myself, I might add, is that that awareness becomes real, becomes substantial, becomes something that we notice in our journey. God bless. Amen.